This dictation from Progressive Exercise 15. Ready? Start. Immediately after I assumed charge of the Ministry of Education in January this very year, I looked into the development projects which had been accepted in principle but not carried out in practice. Of these, one of the most outstanding was the scheme for a Central College of Training for Teachers. The Central Advisory Board of Education had in December this year recommended the establishment of two training colleges, one for men and the other for women, each providing for an intake of 200 students for the service of the centrally administered areas and the smaller provinces and states. On the grounds of economy, the Government of India modified that recommendation and decided to establish one college for both men and women with a capacity of 300. Provision was accordingly made in the budget as per the recommendations of the committee for the establishment of the college. Para. When I took office, I was therefore surprised to find that the whole program had been held up on the ground of shortage of building materials. I was aware of the difficulties in securing steel and cement and other equipment, and I could understand the delay in the implementation of the building program. I could not, however, understand why this led to a postponement of the entire scheme. Even if buildings were lacking, the institute could have been started in temporary structures or hired houses, but here, as in so many other cases, programs of educational development were held up on the ground of lack of accommodation. This undue stress upon buildings has always seemed to me to be an instance of confusing ends with means. Buildings are only a means of which the end is education, and yet it seemed to me that many of our educational planners were so engrossed with building projects that they could not think of carrying on educational work in their absence. I therefore decided forthwith that the institution must be started immediately with whatever accommodation was readily available. The period was an exceedingly difficult one, and all the attention of the government was concentrated first on the disturbances in the Punjab and later on the impending division of the country. Even then, a small house was secured in the Delhi University area in July this very year. I realized that this was not adequate for our needs now and the work of the institute in the future. Para. It is hardly necessary for me to relate at length the importance of an institute of this kind. With literacy figures so low as only 15%, the paramount importance of expanding the facilities of education is obvious. The acceptance of democracy as the pattern of our state has, if anything, added to the urgency of the program. It is also self evident that the first step towards expanding the facilities of education is to provide for an increase in the number of trained teachers. Equally necessary is an institution to assess the results of educational methods followed till now and devise improvements demanded in the changing circumstances of today. It will be noticed that the institution which was started in December this very year was the Central Institute of Education and not the training college which had originally been planned in 1944 and 1945. This meant not merely a change in nomenclature but a considerable expansion in the purpose and functions of the institution. I felt that changes were necessary in two directions. First, it should not be merely a college for training teachers but also an institution for research in the fields of education. Secondly, its services should not be restricted to the centrally administered areas but should extend to the whole of India. The Central Institute will therefore both train teachers for higher and secondary schools and also carry on research on the problems of basic and secondary education. The stage at which a child should be introduced to a craft as distinct from activity. The relative emphasis on craft and academic subjects and their correlation, the production of a new type of school literature of bring out the social functions of all human activity, the degree of abstraction possible in the earlier stages of education, the stage at which there may be some bifurcation between academic subjects and crafts, the grouping of children according to aptitude, taste, and ability, the place of art in the school curriculum. These are only a few of the many problems which arise out of a new conception of basic education and require constant and careful study in a research institution. There are also problems relating to adult education which demand fresh and careful scrutiny. It is a commonplace that the methods which are suitable for children cannot, without modification, be applied to adults. No doubt, a good deal of work in this connection has been done in other countries of the world, but each country has its own peculiar problems arising out of its social and economic background and its political history. Now, stop. Exercise 16. Ready? Start. We have as one of the items for discussion today a problem which raises fundamental issues of law and justice. Till now, the state has looked upon an offence as a crime for which the offender must pay. Such offences, whether you call them crimes or sins, were regarded as evil and attracted as their inevitable consequence punishment. Punishment was therefore regarded as a consequence of crime and justified in itself. The classic exposition of this view is in the principle an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Later ages, however, raised the question of the utility or justification of punishment. Critics arose who asked how a murdered person benefited by the slaughter of his murderer. In fact, the only result was the loss of life of two individuals instead of one. Punishment was therefore sought to be justified on grounds of its deterrent character, but even this did not satisfy critics who pointed out that as a matter of fact punishment deter. Para did not deter. Para, a new school of thought arose which approached the problem of punishment from the point of view of reform of the offender instead of a retributive theory of punishment. We thus find the emergence of an educative and reformatory theory of punishment. This dispute between the different theories of punishment has not yet been settled, but on one point there is almost unanimous agreement among both theorists and practical men of affairs. All agree that in the case of juveniles, there must be a change of outlook with regard to punishment. For one thing, young persons without maturity of judgment cannot be held fully responsible for their actions. For another, experience has shown that confinement of such juveniles in jails confirms them into criminals. In fact, children who may have committed some crime through want of knowledge or on the impulse of the moment become habitual criminals if they are once sent to jail. Recognition of this fact has led many countries to provide separate establishments for juveniles. In India, we have had reformatories and houses of correction in different provinces, but it must be admitted that even these have not fully met the purpose. The provision of such reformatories or juvenile jails has no doubt separated the juvenile offenders from the confirmed criminals, but as they themselves have been miniature jails, the executive aspect has not found the emphasis. Para. The position with regard to the care and management of juvenile delinquents is thus obviously unsatisfactory. In the first place, not all the provinces that have children's acts on their statute books are working them adequately. The work is chiefly confined to bigger cities, and even there it leaves much to be desired. The probation officers have not the requisite training, nor have the magistrates of the juvenile courts the required qualifications. The certified schools are not working properly, and aftercare is all but non existent. A little consideration will show that in a matter like the problem of juvenile delinquency and the proper methods of dealing with it, there must be uniformity among the different provinces. It is also desirable that the practice of this country should conform as far as possible to that of other enlightened countries of the world. Para. In the UK, the persons between the age of 8 and 17 are regarded as juveniles and are tried by special juvenile courts. Panels of magistrates are selected from justices of peace, and according to present regulations, these panels consist of 2 or 3 persons selected every 3 years. In metropolitan courts, one of the magistrates must be a woman, while outside London this practice is observed as far as possible. The administration of the courts is under the Home Officer, but special advisory committees were set up in 1910 in order to make the attitude of the administration more progressive. In the past, punishment for the juvenile delinquents was in proportion to the gravity of the offences, but in recent times, the trend is towards the reclamation of the future citizen rather than the punishment of an offender. The changeover from punishment to education is almost complete in USA and in some of the European countries. In the USA, the upper age limit for juvenile delinquents is 21. Up to the age of 18, the offender is under the exclusive jurisdiction of the juvenile courts, but from 18 to 21, these courts exercise a concurrent jurisdiction with the ordinary courts. The trend of legislation is to make the juvenile courts independent of the ordinary system of criminal justice. In addition to the special magistrates, the USA provides for referees to assist in the hearing of deposition of the cases. Where the delinquent is a girl, it is the practice to associate a properly qualified woman referee with the court. The USA has no advisory bodies, perhaps because social service agencies play an important part in all cases before the juvenile courts as such. Stop.